everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Deanna and you're watching Orchid. Now, as you can see, I have potted up these orchids from my recent haul. So if you're new to my channel or you weren't able to join me on the weekend and you haven't seen my most recent video, I will put a link to the video down in the description below, and I will put a link up here which you can access at the end of the video. But basically it was my 100th video anniversary on the weekend, and I bought a box of orchids, as you do, and I unboxed the orchid haul as a premiere video on the weekend, and I got to chat with a bunch of you and it was awesome and I had a lot of fun. So thank you everyone who joined me. But anyway, these are the orchids that are potted up now, so I just want to do a little bit of an update on how I potted them up and the findings of each orchid in terms of their general health. I also wanted to show you a couple of orchids which are completely unrelated to this haul, which are potentially mislabeled. I will show them after I go through these orchids one by one, but because you guys joined me for the unboxing, I thought you might be interested to see how they are looking now that they aren't all bare root. First one I want to start with is my Dendrobium Bohemian Rhapsody, and you might notice that it's lost a few more leaves down here. Oh, yep, there goes a couple more, and that may be accelerated by the stress, but also I've been keeping it outside, so it may or may not have been exposed to slightly cooler temperatures at night, but they were yellowing and dropping off anyway. Now, a lot of you guys suggested that I should mount it, and obviously I did consider mounting it, although I don't actually own any mounts, but I have decided to pot it because it's just generally easier for me to care for, and I think it's actually going to do just fine potted. It's hanging with this little wire hanger outside, and if you have a look at the base, you can see that little growth that I showed you during the unboxing has actually grown a little bit more even since I potted it up. And you might remember that a couple of the canes were broken during transport. So this tiniest one I did cut, and the others I've actually done this dodgy taping job with. You can see a little bit of wire and just taped it. So you can see I've done the same over here, just got a little piece of stiff wire and wrapped some tape around it, and hopefully that will just allow the natural sap to still run and it'll heal the cane by itself. Doesn't look very pretty, but hopefully it will do the job, because this little one does have a few little nubbins swelling up there. There's a few on each of these canes actually. You can see those little nubbins, so hopefully they will mature into flower buds. In terms of the media I've used, I've actually used a new mix that I've gotten from a place called Orchid Den down at the Gold Coast, and it is a mix of scoria rock and large orchiata bark, and I've mixed through a little bit of sphagnum as well, because I do find that the dendrobiums like a lot of water during summer, but it's still a very airy mix. You can see the size of a lot of these bark pieces, but it's got the scoria in it as well, so that serves for a couple of things. The whole mix is really quite airy, but it gives some stability and weight to the pot. And so with these guys, there's obviously a little bit of weight associated with hanging pendant canes, and basically this plant is obviously not established at the moment, so the scoria rock will just help anchor everything down and give it some stability while it creates some new roots and establishes itself in its new home. Next up, we've got my two cattleya, and they are mostly in a mix of orchiata bark. It's got some perlite and charcoal in it, and I mix a tiny bit of sphagnum into my mixes as well, just to help with hydration through the summer months. But this is the quarterback cross with nodosa, and you can see there's the growth that was pushing out. It hasn't really done too much since I repotted it. And there's a couple of other nubbins swelling there. You can see that these root tips are still intact, so they should move forward. These guys still seem to be alive and growing, which is very promising. So the second one to show you is this BC Kioi variation V Galaxy, and this one didn't have as many sort of fresh long growing roots as the other one. I'm sort of experimenting with the scoria mix actually. So this one has that scoria and large bark mix in it with a little bit of sphagnum. But good news is that I can see some little root nubbins starting to poke out there, which is always a very good sign. The next three I just wanted to talk about were these three. So that's the Brassia rex, the Encyclia prismatocarpa, and the Coelogene burfordiense. And all three of them had signs in their rhizome that there might have been a little bit of rot happening, and unfortunately the Encyclia did have signs of a purple ring around the outer edges of the rhizome, which may indicate fusarium. Now you can see that some of these bulbs are a bit shriveled, but the Encyclia, the one that had the most purple tinges, I guess, you can see that the new canes, they look pretty good. Like, they look plump, they look pretty healthy. This one might be a tiny bit smaller, but they don't look significantly smaller than the previous growths. In particular, this growth here, you can see lots of new root tips coming through. Now, I guess in terms of fusarium, I don't treat it any differently from any sort of fungal infection or rot. So all three of these have had a really good soak in a systemic antifungal solution. All my new orchids get watered separately, as in I don't share water with the rest of my collection for at least a couple of months until I know that they're growing vigorously. It's not the first time I've seen a purple ring on plants that I've gotten. Pretty much all of them have pulled through, and not just pulled through, but they're doing just fine. So obviously take care with any fungal infection. Fusarium, yes, it is a worry. If it's a fungal infection, of course it can spread, but I certainly don't think there's any cause to set them on fire and chuck them like out into the front yard. I actually think they're going to be fine. So we will follow these three, see how they go, see how they establish, and I will keep you informed of how they go. I informed the seller that there may be some infection going on, and I said I would keep an eye on them, I would treat them, and I just basically told her as a courtesy so she could look in her collection. So we'll start with this Encyclia. There's not really much to say because it hasn't changed that much since I potted it up, but you can see I've used a medium to large bark mix, little bit of sphagnum, not very much at all. These roots have grown a little bit since potting it up. As I mentioned, it did get an antifungal soak. Seems to be doing okay. This is the Brassia rex, and if you remember, it actually split into two plants. These two bulbs with the new growth is one plant, and the rest of it with this new growth is the other one. So this growth has grown a little bit since I potted it up, and it's in a fairly large bark mix, but there is a reasonable amount of sphagnum in this because it's an Oncidium type. I know it's going to get quite thirsty during summer, but you can see this one and the other one are actually in much bigger pots than my usual, and I really like them. They're a really good size. They're about 20 centimeters. They're quart pots, which mean they're a bit shallower. They've got excellent drainage, and you can see I've just used some styrofoam for crocking, and I'm really happy with how they've sort of come out. So you can also see I've stabilized it at 2 points. So these are the two different plants until it grows these growths a little bit further and establishes itself well in the pot. But yeah, again, antifungal soaked, and I'm confident that it'll do okay. This is the Coelogene burfordiense, and I mean, this is a massive plant. You can see it's in that same quart pot, but it hardly had any viable roots. So you can see that I've stabilized it in 2 points, otherwise it would be extremely wobbly. It's got 2 points where it's been cut at the rhizome, this side and this side, and you can see that this growth is actually less shriveled than the other ones, so I assume this is one of the newest growths. It doesn't have any growing root tips at the moment. I'm not sure what it'll do next. Hopefully it'll start popping out a new growth, or it'll start growing new roots from this side. It's obviously come from a well-established plant, but yeah, I'm curious to see what it'll do next. I have potted this in a large bark mix, which does have some perlite and charcoal in it as well. There is no sphagnum in this one, so it's a dry mix, and yeah, without any roots currently. We'll just have to see what happens, and hopefully it starts doing something active soon. So the last plant from the haul that I want to show you guys is the Dendrochilum wenzellii. As you guys know, I was extremely impressed with the state of this plant. It's just so healthy, and its spike situation is just very impressive. So this one actually had a really good root system. All the roots were very plump, and there were only a few roots that I had to remove. You can see down in between these pseudobulbs that there's still a little bit of live moss, so I actually didn't pick between the pseudobulbs too much. I just removed a few of the dead roots and then I potted it on. I just didn't want to disturb it too much, and it just looked generally very healthy, so I left it as is as much as I could. But you can see that some of these flowers are starting to come out. It's so hard to believe this is actually an orchid. It just looks so different to other orchids that I've got, and really unique, but the colour is very vibrant. It's a beautiful red colour, and I can just imagine when all these spikes start to develop, the colour is going to be amazing. So you can see that it's a really densely clustered orchid. So from what I've read, the Dendrochilums enjoy staying relatively evenly moist, and so I've potted it up kind of like an oncidium, so with a small bark mix with some sphagnum mixed in. But I did show you my other Dendrochilum, which was kept basically the same way, and it's doing very poorly. It looks super sad. I did show it to you in the unboxing video, so if you want to see it, check it out, but just trust me, it looks terrible. And I'm not sure if that was because it just started off in such a bad state to begin with, whereas this one's nice and healthy, or if it was due to poor culture and poor care on my behalf. So if this one starts absolutely hating life in this pot, then I will change things up, but it's got quite fine roots like an oncidium as well, so I'll just have to see how it goes. Alright everyone, well, to finish off this video, I wanted to show you guys these two plants and explain to you the little mystery that's surrounding them. So, I'll tell you what they're labelled, but this is my Colmenara catatante, and that is my Oncydopsis nelliela. So, these two both came from the same seller, but they came in different orders. This one came to me around May last year, and this one came around July last year. So both of these have been in my care for over a year. Neither of them have bloomed, so I've never been able to verify exactly what they are. This one I've been wintering outside, this one I've been wintering in my upstairs grow space, and after I did my updates last week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks ago, one of you guys have pointed out that you have a sneaky suspicion that my nelliela might be my catatante. And I have to say I'm a little bit concerned because you have a very valid point. So I thought that together we can have a really close look at these plants and see if these suspicions might be founded. So just looking at them from the outset, you might be able to see that both of them have an amazing root system, and that both their pseudobulbs are approximately the same size and very plump. Now the colouring is a little bit different of the leaves. This one you can see is a little bit lighter, that's a little bit darker. However, this one has been kept under those very strong grow lights for the last couple of months. I put it under those lights because I really wanted it to bloom. So let's just have a closer look at both of the plants. Now from this angle and frame alone, I think that you guys can see the similarity between the pseudobulbs In fact, they look almost identical with very slight ridging, even to the point of, do you see that little like bump there? These pseudobulbs also have these little bumps there. They've both developed with a couple of the outer sheaths still intact, and even their roots look extremely similar the way they're growing. They're both very thirsty plants, and if we look at the leaves, they've both got 2 apical leaves, and I guess the leaf shape has kind of a little bit of a point at the end, about 1 inch across. Same with this one. So what can I say, guys? We might have 2 of the same plant. And certainly looking at other Nellie Islas on the internet, I mean, this doesn't look like a Miltoniopsis at all. And a lot of the Nellie Islas that I've seen look a lot more towards the Miltoniopsis side. And certainly I had some suspicions on that part that it didn't look too much like a Miltoniopsis, but I just thought maybe it was the variety and it erred towards the Oncidium type more. But these are quite big pseudobulbs. So this plant, you can see that starting to grow a new growth from this bulb. It's got 3 new growths this season, and I can't see any flower spikes in any of them, and certainly that one's growing a new growth, so I guess there's still a chance that it might bloom, but I'm not holding my breath for it. I think probably about 75% of the time, once a growth matures and it starts bringing out a new growth, I sort of give up hope that it'll bring out a flower spike. It's not always the case, but it often is. The Nellie Isla, however, I have noticed some promising changes. Can you see down here? That's poking through. And also, can you see this? So I'm fairly certain these are flower spikes. So I think it's got 2 flower spikes developing. I have had a look in the other new growth that it's developed this season, and I can't see anything coming out of that. So it may be that very soon we will find out what this is. So I would like to get your opinions on what you think of my apparent Nellie Isla. I'm starting to suspect the worst, that is not a Nellie Isla, and I would like to know what you guys would do. Like, it's been over a year since I've had the plant. It grows beautifully, but if it's not a Nellie Isla, would you contact the seller and ask for a refund? I'd like to know your thoughts. I mean, I guess we get mislabeled orchids all the time. Do you guys ask for refunds? Does it happen commonly to you where you find out maybe 1, even 2 years later that it's not the correct plant, and what do you do about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please put them in the comment below. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and this little update. Thank you again for joining me on the weekend for the premiere. I really had a lot of fun chatting with you guys. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more orchid videos. Hope you guys have a great week and happy growing until I see you next time.